Okay, if somebody would unmute themselves quickly, are you just seeing the presentation or are you also seeing the sidebar?
The sidebar.
Okay,
You
Now
mean by sidebar, the people?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now I just minimize the people. Does that come through okay?
Well, it
You-
hasn't changed, but
Okay,
we can
that's
see the
because that's
screen.
your screen. That's not what's being recorded. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, so for those who are new, the website is oakmontginclub.org. And if you go there, there's a bunch of different things to see, which includes for those who are new section, it includes a recent presentation section. This presentation as recorded will be on that site. What will also be on that site is a list of everything I'm going to refer to today as a website. And all you have to do is open that up and click on it to get the link to work. So why are we using the internet at all? The first reason is because it gives us access to original records. For those people who've done genealogical research for years, you want desperately to take a look at original records, original wills, original birth and deaths records, Bibles, everything you can get your hands on that relates to your family. And the internet is increasingly making that available. We'll look at a number of examples today. And that includes immigration and military. The indexes are getting better and better. And so once again, you can get on, you can find things that you couldn't find before. And once on the internet, the records typically remain there. So it's not like you made a visit to some distant repository of information, and when you were there, you found something interesting, but unfortunately, that's in Minnesota, and you're now in Santa Rosa. But now you can find it. And periodically, things that are on the internet get moved or removed, and there's a location called archive.org that actually keeps old records. So quite often you can find an old record you can't find again there. I also think it's a great opportunity personally to develop comfort with technology at a time when technology is just running by us at 100 miles an hour. So again, we want to find original records as much as possible. There aren't many transcriptions. Transcriptions are fine. As somebody once said, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If somebody's got information that's interesting, hey, copy it down. But when you get information that you're not sure about in a transcription, treat it as a start, treat it as a hypothesis, treat it as something that you want to research in the future. And therefore, you're still looking for more records, more original records. This is particularly true when you deal with things that are, let's say, at all questionable. I have my wife's grandfather immigrated from Lithuania, and I have birth dates for him that range from 1860 to 1870, depending on what document you look at. In a lot of cases, you start with less information and add more as it helps you do your research. And as you do your research, you're going to find information that will help you revise your research. So just you keep coming back around to it. And that again is one of the advantages. Once you know that in fact, the wife's name was Margaret, and you can really say, I'm comfortable that's the right name. You don't have to go back to Minnesota to look at the original record. All you have to do is sign back onto the internet and look at it. Now, one of the things that we do a lot of is look for people who are related to the people you're searching. Just think about your own life. There's what's called the fan club, friends, associates, and neighbors, people who may be important in your life who aren't your immediate family. These help to give you a richer view of your own ancestry. It also helps you in research quite frequently. It may be easier to figure out why they're misspelling Kutkovsky, because they've taken the K and made it a CH in this particular census. If you can just say, I know the name of the next door neighbor in 1910, that next door neighbor is probably still next door in 1920. And there's a concept called adopt the regiment. It applies to military, but it applies to other groups. If you know that your ancestor was a soldier in the 17th Virginia Infantry Regiment in the Revolutionary War, and you know the dates of his service, you can go to the original records of that regiment and figure out where it fought, which is why I know that my 6th great grandfather was at the Delaware with Washington and probably fought the Hessians. Not because as a poor private, there'd be any actual record of him. So we're going to take a look at the 3 top sites for research, and then we're going to look at other sites. Family Search is by far and away the most powerful site because it's free. It has a lot of databases. You need to create a sign-in. That doesn't mean it's not free, just means they want to know who you are. And one of the things they do is try and tailor the information they give you a little bit to what you've seen from previous times, etc. The only frustration is some of their databases were given to them, like for example, some of their church records were given to them with the condition that they could only be viewed inside the church. And for those who don't know, Family Search is the organization associated with the Latter-day Saints. There is a family history center here in Santa Rosa. You could go there and see those databases, but you can't see them at home. Unfortunately, it's closed because of the pandemic. Ancestry, which is the far and away best paid for site, is available free at the Sonoma Library. My traditional comment at this point is don't plan on using it on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a school day. If you go over to the one over here at Renco.
Oh, no.
Okay, but it is available free at home right now with the library card, and there are instructions online as to how to do that. And Google is in fact a surprisingly effective search place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch. Okay, so I'm going to go to, okay, and I want everybody to see, this is my genealogy bookmarks. Okay, these are general bookmarks. These are folders that have lots of bookmarks. Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit later. But right now we're going to open up Family Search, which requires you to sign in. It has my sign-in information recorded, so it does it automatically on this computer. Okay, so if you look at Family Search, and I want to just take a minute or two and look at it slowly. Okay, it has what's called the family tree. It is trying to build, the church is trying to build a single tree with information on everybody they can find in the world. So they're linking everybody. Okay. It has search routines. You can search records, images, the family tree. You can search their catalog, books, and what's called the research wiki. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Okay. And there's indexing, which basically is what you do if you want to help index records that have never been indexed. But we're going to take a look at the records. And I'm going to put in Samuel Mitchell McKinney, who is my great-grandfather. And I'm going to put in his date of birth is 1853. I'm going to put in the range 1852 to 1854. I do that because there are many records that are dated by age of the person at the time of the event. And therefore, the actual birth date could be on either side of the year you would calculate. So having said that, we're going to do a search. Now, before we do it, these little boxes next to the pieces say you want the information to be exact. Now that means, for example, if I clicked here, Samuel Mitchell, it would not look up Samuel M. It would only look for Samuel Mitchell, because I would say I want that exactly. And I will also comment that you can put in like country. That's frequently useful. But let's now just do a search, see what we get. Okay, so here are 123,000 records that might relate to Samuel Mitchell McKinney. And because we didn't do exact, it's going to get some stuff that's close to this. But that's often useful if it turned out that somebody spelled McKinney with one N. Well, here we have, in fact, his grave. And we're going to quickly go there. On the right-hand side, this links to the tree, that great family tree we talked about. This is a transcription, which we'll go to in a minute. And this is the original record that they indexed here. Now that record is from Find a Grave, and it gives his birth date and death date, where that was, where he is buried, and down below, who his wife was, who his parents were, and then children listed, etc. And the fact that they're highlighted means you could actually click on them and get more information. Okay, now we're going to keep moving, but what we can do from this is a couple of things. We know he's associated with West Virginia and particularly Wyoming County, and we know who the name of his wife, his father, and his mother, which may be of interest later. Okay, so we will go back to the overall list.
George,
Yes.
when you have those biographies there, how do you know who wrote them?
Actually, in that particular case,
it said indicated.
information supplied by Henry Dillon and Charlotte Blankenship Elkins.
If it's
So think about this as like, this is like a transcription. Okay, the information is likely to be correct, but you can't guarantee it's correct. It's not the original document per se. Okay, and everybody understands that even though this is maybe the information on the site, what the tombstone probably says is 1853 to 1927. Okay, but I assume the burial is accurate. Okay, so think about this as really good, but not necessarily perfect information. Okay, so the next person down, that's a one of his sons, but not him. Now here we've got Samuel Mitchell as the father in West Virginia deaths for Nancy Elizabeth McKinney. Okay, so this being a death record, let's take a look at it. This is a somewhat typical death record in later years here. Nancy Elizabeth, date of her death, okay, where she died, where she lived, date of her birth, she was 90 years old. She was a housewife. Who was her father and mother? Why did she die? Okay, and she was attended by. And where is she buried? Okay, now this is one level more accurate by definition than the information we just saw a moment ago. But it's still, if you think about it, whoever filled out this record in 1967 almost certainly did not personally know Samuel Mitchell McKinney and Sarah Kadle McKinney. So this is information that sometimes is wrong, as is date of birth. The person who filled this out certainly was not present at her birth. Okay. Now, just a side note for those who are doing research for years, I had not previously known what this weird number 4201 was. But you will find that on most death certificates after 1898. It is what's called an international, the exact phrase, international classification of disease. And the this is actually 420.1, okay? Heart disease specified as involving coronary arteries. Okay, now in this case, you can probably figure that out from looking at this stuff, but you know, there are an awful lot of death certificates which have this information accurately and don't have something you can read over here. So if you actually want to know why people died, this is a really good, this is the official classification. Okay, let's go back.
George,
Yes,
where do you get the index of those classifications?
Yeah.
that's on the page that I've posted on the website. Okay,
Thank you.
there's a link to a description of what it is, and then how do you get the index. The index is updated every decade. So what you have to do is somehow you got to fiddle with it a little bit when you look at a record to figure out which index that relates to. But it's all there, and it's on the website. Okay, I want to go back up to his Find a Grave and show you something. We're going to look at the transcription. Okay, and you can see how it's much more limited. However, over on the right-hand column, they've said, you know, in the family tree, this is where the information on him is. People have put in information about him. So these are various things that they have put in that you might want to look at some point. All right, let's go back. Okay. Now, as we scroll down, this is just general information. Here is his will. And his will is in 2 different counties. And the reason is because he owned property in both counties and it needed to be filed to clear the property. So you could take a look here at his original will. Okay. Then we're getting some census information. I'm going to get the censuses in just a minute. And then we're going to get to his actual death certificate. Okay, he died of Bright's disease. Okay, so we've gotten a tremendous amount of basic information, okay, that in fact is coming from one source. And I often recommend, if you're starting genealogy, work your way back to your grandparents and then deal with those 4 as you start working backwards. Okay. Now, inside this particular search site is collections. And that's what that shows is many different records that in fact exist. There's a category, birth, marriage, death, 594 categories of records. Okay, censuses, migration records, military records, another which is basically directories, and then probate and court records. Now, you will notice there's a little frustration here. England, I don't want a lot of English records. So what happens with Family Search is you can train yourself to go down below the search area, and there are these ways you can narrow it down. You can narrow it down. Now you have to understand, if you narrow it down, if the information's void, it's not going to help you. But I can go to residence place and want to say, I only want to look at the ones that are related to the United States. Okay, so now I've got those that are related to the United States only. Let's look at the censuses quickly. And I want to look at 2. Censuses are very powerful. Here's 1860, and we have 146 that relate to this broad search for Samuel Mitchell McKinney. But what do we see on the first one? First one's from Wyoming County, and it is listed with Samuel P. McKinney and Elizabeth McKinney. Well, where did he come from and who were his parents? This is them. So we're going to look at the record. The censuses are broken into three groups. Up until 1840, the censuses were quite narrow. They were dealt with numbers. They would tell you so-and-so, Samuel McKinney was living in Wyoming County. In his household, there were two males between under 10. There were two males between 10 and 20, etc. So it doesn't tell you names. In 1850, they began doing names. And from 1850 to 1880, it looked generally like this. Here's a schedule: county, post office, not a bad thing to know. If you can read it, the name of the guy who took the census. There's a date, July 7th. That's not the date of the census. The census was as of June 1st. So when this man came around to these houses, he said, on June 1st, who was in your house? So if you had had a child born between June 1st and July 7th, you were not supposed to list them. And if someone died, they were supposed to still be listed as if they were living. Okay. Now on the website, I have the information about the dates for every census. I have the information about these headings. What is it that they're looking for? Okay. And I have the information, if you really are into censuses, and I have been, of the instructions given to the census takers, which itself is interesting. I won't get into it today. So we're going to look down to the Samuel Mitchell McKinney. Here's William McKinney. And then there's Samuel P. McKinney. That's the Samuel Paris we knew. His wife, Elizabeth, and notice that there's not an indication she's the wife, although it's a logical conclusion, and all the children. Now, as you make your way across, the check mark in this column for Elizabeth is that she cannot read or write. The check mark in this column is that these three children went to school that year. Okay. And in this column, I want to go back up here for a minute. Over in here, they have the number of the household, and the number of families, and the number of the household. So you may have more than one family in a household. This would be particularly true in an urban area where you would have a tenement. All right, I want to go back and I want to hit the 1900 census to show you how that's different. And the censuses from 1900 to 1940 generally look more like this one. Oops, wrong way. Collections, censuses, 1900. So we're going to look at the census.
George, do we know when the current census is going to be incorporated?
Censuses are incorporated, I think it's 75 years after they are taken.
Well, it's been 75 years, I think, so that.
Yeah, so that we just had the 1940 census, and it'll be 3 more years before we have the 1950 census.
But the 1940, when will it be?
It's out right now. You can look up the 1940.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, quite often, for most of us, if we were to the census, you can virtually guarantee our parents were in the census. Mm-hmm. So it's a good place to start in your own research. When I'm researching a new person, I will start with the 1940 census and just go right back. 1940, 1930, all the way back, and see what I find. Okay, so here we have location, and here it's a little different. Left-hand column is the name of the street. So if you had someone who was living in Santa Rosa, there would be a street name, there would be a house number. You could go look up the house that your family, by Googling that street name and number. Google will show you a picture of the modern house that's on that site, which is fun, a lot of fun. So here's Samuel, he's the head of the household. Here's the month he was born in. Okay. He's been married for 26 years. And now look at Sarah Kadle. She has had, I'm just telling you what these headlines are. You can find them for yourself. She has had 10 children. All of them are living. And in 1900, that was an exception, not the norm. Okay, going across from Samuel, he was born in West Virginia, as was his father and mother. Okay, he is a farmer. He had no days off of work that year. Okay, if you think about someone who had an occupation in a city, that might be a number for how many months he didn't work. Okay, he owns the farm. It is free and clear. There's no mortgage on it. Okay, and you will see that here's his whole family. Each of the children, when they were born, their current age. And there's George W. I'm George W. the third. That's George W. the first. He's my grandfather. Okay. And note that the boys are all listed as farm laborers, which means Alfred, age 10, is listed in the census as a farm laborer. Isn't that interesting? So quite often you can get quite interesting things by looking at the occupation. And sometimes knowing the occupation helps you find someone in a later census. Okay. And then you know who their neighbors were. The Blankenships, it turns out that they are closely related to the McKinneys. Here is Joseph McKinney, who is one of Samuel's brothers, the Lillies, et cetera, et cetera. So this is so let's say, inbred little section of West Virginia. Okay, I'm going to look up one more thing here before we get moving, and that we're going to change it totally. So we're going to do a, I guess we call it a reboot. We're going to reset everything. And I want to put in Boleslaw Bardzikowska. Okay, we're not going to get today. That 2 months from now, we'll talk about the weird things you have to do to be basically able to deal with names, particularly names like these. And we're going to look at him in Massachusetts. I just want to show you one quick thing. Location. There we go. Residence, Massachusetts. Okay, this is my wife's grandmother's brother. Oh, come on. Oh, all the collections. So search all collections.
I always thought a Scott ending meant it was a woman.
Well, the reason why I'm being hesitant here is I know this is going to bring up the record I want to show you. Okay, so I'm cheating. Scott is in fact a woman. Ski is in fact a man. And we'll talk about that in a couple of months. Sorry about that. I simply want to show you one basic thing here. They're down at the bottom, family. There they are. Okay. So this is the 1930 census. Again, this is the number of the house they lived on Washburn Street. So you could look up Washburn Street in New Bedford and 59 Washburn and may be able to see there. They own their unit. He's 40. They've been married 22 years. He's from Poland, as is she. Their native language is Polish. This is what I wanted to show you. He is shown as having immigrated in 1906 and still being an alien. She immigrated in 1910 and is an alien. And up above, there's an 80-year-old neighbor who immigrated from Germany, speaks German, and he immigrated in 1883 and he's been naturalized. Okay. And then they have all sorts of information. And by the way, the little number in here is actually the code for the occupation the person had. So a lot of information you can get from the censuses on immigration if you want to go there. Okay, any questions now before I move away from family search? Okay, I'm going to now go to Ancestry. Okay, and we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'm going to do Samuel Mitchell McKinney. Okay, and here it's a little different. You put in the birth year, and then if you want to keep it exact, you can say plus or minus 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. I do 1 year. And
You have an H after McKinney.
do I really?
Yeah.
I was going to have trouble with that. Thank you. Hard to believe that I actually put myself through college in part by typing.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, and here we have very similar information to the other one. We have the 1910 census, find a grave, etc. They have lots of different indexes over here, databases over here, censuses, birth, military, that you can go through. I'm going to look at pictures for a minute. And what these are pictures that if you have put your information on their web of your tree, you can have posted a picture. So this actually is a famous picture of my great-grandparents. Don't know how to make it larger here quickly, so we'll just accept the fact it's not going to be larger for the moment. There it comes. My sister has the original, which was taken by my grandfather circa 1910, and is probably 3 feet by 5 feet.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And the great story about this is Granddaddy Sam and Sarah on their mules. And he was hesitant to have his picture taken. They took the picture, and a week later, a lightning storm killed his mule.
Oh.
And that convinced him that this thing about pictures was not something he ever wanted to do again. So that's Granddaddy Sam.
Is Mary Wallace your sister?
No.
Oh.
I have Sister Mary, yes. But not Mary Wallace. That would be somebody else who's put information on. Okay, so we have lots of different information. And of course, you could go to the family tree and look information other people have put in. There's a hesitation in doing that too quickly. And the hesitation is there's a possibility you will copy incorrect information. So what we're going to do is look real quickly at their family trees. Okay, and what they do is they group the family trees by people with a common name. So here's Joseph Samuel, not mine. We're Samuel Mitchell. So I'm going to look at those 635 trees and show you an interesting problem. The first person listed says he was born in Basin in the county of Bighorn in the state of Wyoming. Excuse me? He was born in the city of Basin in the county of Wyoming in the state of West Virginia. So,
County?
so you do not want to just go in and say, oh, I want to copy this information. It must be right. Okay? Everybody comfortable with that?
Is there a county called Wyoming?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Now we're going to quickly move over to Google. And the thing about Google is we're talking in a couple of minutes about how to use Google, but we're going to take it's great for younger people where you're more likely to get information. So I'm going to do George Wesley.
Helps.
There we go. W instead of an E. Again, I'm the third. This is my father. So we're going to see what happens if we search that. So here's an obituary. Here are images. That is an actual picture of my father. That was a professional picture. This is the Federal Reserve Discount Window, is a book that he wrote that's actually still in publication. He was, in fact, a founder of the Business and Economic Research. This, though, is actually a 1949 edition that lists what he is going to do his doctoral thesis on at UVA. Okay, and I want to just see if I can real quickly shoot the other one. It has a reference to my mother and some of the stuff she did. Okay, it has, let's see what else. There was one other one I wanted to refer to, if I can get it here quickly. Okay, well, in any case, so the other thing you can do when you're on here is you can go to images. Okay, there are his pictures, and then a bunch of stuff that isn't as relevant. There's my grandfather. That's interesting. That's my mother's singing group at Pine Mountain. Must have her as a reference. But must have him as a reference because it's obviously searching him. All right, and then you can do videos. No, none found. Okay. Well, I've separately found videos, but I'm not going to try and find them again today. So, but you can see that there are things you can find. The one thing you have to watch out for in Google is it literally is looking for exactly this phrase. The whole way Google works is it looks at each URL, independent page inside the internet, for exactly what you put in. So if I put in George McKinney without quotation marks, it's going to find all sorts of stuff about Georges and McKinneys that are on the same page, but have nothing to do with the total name. When you put it in quotation marks, it looks for exactly what's in the quotation marks. So I'm going to go back to the slides.
George, can I say something really quick?
Sure.
When I'm looking at Ancestry and looking at other families, family trees, one thing I always do is look and see if the person that posted that tree shares DNA with me.
Mm.
And I found it very useful in terms of getting in touch with people I otherwise would not have.
Yes, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we get more into DNA as a process.
Okay.
But yeah, one of the things a lot of people, I would say on average, it's about half the people you will find through this process who posted information would be glad to share information, and quite often are in fact related. Sometimes you just have to figure out what their handle is. I had a bunch of information from somebody named Gunpowder. I was trying to figure out what gunpowder was, but I figured out that I actually have a cousin who was a professional gunsmith, and that's him. Okay, Google searches for what you've asked for, and it loves words. So if you start putting words in and you get too much stuff, just keep putting words in. Google freaks out when you get to about 70 words. Okay, but you can start with a few and see what you get. But you can add names, locations, life elements. I could, with my father, one of the more powerful ones is I put in just his name and Irving Trust, which was the bank he worked for. Add quotation marks a lot. And there's a cute thing you can do, you put a minus sign attached to, but just before a word. I have a part of my family that are Presleys. And anytime I search for a Presley, I'm going to put a minus Elvis in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can guarantee you, otherwise I'm going to get 90% of the returns are going to be about Elvis. And do remember with Google to view images. Okay, now we're going to talk about some other sites quickly. Find a grave we've already looked at. That's very powerful because once you find someone, you can literally look around the cemetery. Who else is in the cemetery with the same last name? A reasonably valuable thing to know. Steve Morse is your go-to site for immigration. We're going to check that one real quickly for one reference. Chronicling America is the best place to go for US newspapers. Unfortunately, US newspapers, the more recent newspapers, all are under some various form of copyright, and they've licensed the right to their files to different groups. So you have to know exactly where the newspaper is for what you're looking for. But if you're before 1923, you can do Chronicling America. Paid, American Ancestors. If your family is New England, you want to go to American Ancestors. Fold 3 is military. And what you can find there are the full pension records. I mean, page after page of the original records for Americans' pensions. And MyHeritage. Now, MyHeritage is sort of a peculiar site. I wouldn't go there first if you're new to research, but it's something to look at, and it's particularly interesting when you get to DNA because they have a large European base of DNA. Okay, so I'm going to do one more thing, which is I'm going to look at Steve Morse. So if you'll bear with me a second, then we'll. So again, genealogy. It's going to go down to immigration. Going to go over to Steve Morse. Do you sense what I've done here in terms of the way I pull together all of the bookmarks for what I'm finding? I don't have to type anything. Everything's a link. So Steve Morse, who's spoken to the club several times, is the world leader in how to find immigration records in the US. So we're going to do Ellis Island, and make sure I get it right. This is very, we're going to try Boleslaw again. You can see you have starts with our, this time it's Bartokowski's right. Okay, lots of stuff you can add, ethnic, etc. But right now, I just want to show you what a immigration record looks like. So it's doing the search. And there he is, Boleslaw Bartokowski, Chervone, Russia. That's on his immigration record is the location. It turns out that we know exactly where that is because it's basically around 5 kilometers from the village they grew up in. So we're going to look at the ship Manifest. And note, by the way, he arrived in 1909. He said he arrived in 1906. So that was obviously an error. You have to have a account with the Ellis Island folks to see the manifest. It doesn't cost anything, but to see the manifest. So here's the manifest. Let's see if I can remember where he is. There he is, Boleslaw Bartokowski. He's 17. Okay, he was from Chervone. His father, Ignacy, was in Chervone. Okay, and he is headed to Providence, Rhode Island. Okay, well, I have a father here, guys. So this is my wife's great-grandfather in Poland. Okay, that's nice information to have. Now, it turns out that there are 2 pages for each of these records. And this is page 890. I have to search a little bit to figure out which way things are indexed. This particular one is page 889. But again, this is sort of fun anyway. So let's see. Here we go. So this is line 20. Here he is. He had $6 with him. He had to have a minimum of 5, I think. He is going to see his sister, Veronica Bartokowska, who in fact is my wife's grandmother, who is in Providence, Rhode Island, living on Day Street. So I know where she is, okay? Which it turns out, this is the only place where I found out what street she was on at that time. Okay, so with all that in mind, I want to go back to presentation quickly. and then we'll turn over to I mentioned briefly that there's a lot of church records that are now coming available, particularly Catholic Church. This is a Catholic Church record from St. John the Evangelist in Wellesley on American ancestors. And let's look at what it has. It has the name of the husband, his parents, including his mother's maiden name, the wife, where she's from, and her parents, okay, and the witnesses. It's a pile of information when you can do that. All right, MyHeritage is sort of weird. You create a personal website, you get free up to about 250 people, and it has these great DNA capabilities. Okay, finally, 5 quick skills. Use bookmarks a lot. You don't want to have to type. Use the Oakmont Gin Club to find links. We have a lot of links. Take a look carefully at our website. Okay, I got to go back and show you the Family Search Wiki real quickly. You can search a document without an index because many documents have a built-in index. Either at the front, they have an alphabetical index, or they're in fact organized chronologically. And there are a lot of instructional videos. I'm going to skip through this because I want to give everybody time to talk. These are all listed on our website, but these are great instructional videos about how to get started and how to do certain kinds of research. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And who would like to either have a question or comment about what we just did, or would like to own up to some work of their own? Ellen, I muted you. You're okay.
Oh, okay, thank you. My curiosity is, once you get some information, how do you catalog it?
Well, first of all, what you can catalog it in any one of several online databases. And the simple one probably is the one on Family Search. You can go to
Oh,
Family
okay,
Search.
so on those places, there are things to follow through with. Okay.
Yeah, you can also acquire fairly inexpensively little programs for your computer.
Oh, okay.
And if you're a serious researcher, you probably, it's more than just a little program. There are some really serious programs. But initially, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, for those of us who did this back in the pre-computer days, or pre-internet days, we would occasionally print out information and put it in 3-ring binders. Okay. And that was fun. Now, if you have original documents yourself, okay, the other thing you can do is get a one of those acetate sheets that you can slide a document into and start organizing those as well. And if you have original pictures, one of the things you may want to do is scan them in.
Okay.
And the one comment I always make about pictures, Alan, is if you don't put all the information you know about who's in that picture, okay, there's no way your kids or nieces or nephews going to ever know. Okay, so every picture you've got, get everything you can about where was it taken, when was it taken, who's in the picture, even if you don't know everybody, because somebody else can fill in the blanks. Okay, any other comments?
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, let's
I want to get software for my computer, and I have a Mac, so I need to decide between Family Tree Maker and Reunion. Are you familiar with both of those?
I am familiar with Family Tree Maker, which is a good program. I'm not familiar with Reunion because I'm a PC user. Do we have any Reunion users here who want to make a comment? The short answer is I really am no longer in a position to comment on reunion.
Okay,
I will say this, remember that the cost of these programs can be fairly cheap compared to what you're going to be putting in them if you value your own time. And the information can be transferred from one program to another trivially using a what's called a GEDCOM, GEDCOM, which is a system that they have designed to allow that to happen. Nancy.
To that point, I have everything right now in Ancestry. Is it possible for me to use GEDCOM to load it to Family Search?
Absolutely. If you go to Ancestry and you open up your tree, there is a method for downloading in GEDCOM.
another
Yeah.
question then, if you've already, I have Ancestry, everything's on Ancestry, but I had started, I have a few people on Family Search. So if I did a GEDCOM, would it know that I already have some people and not put them on twice?
There is a method by which you can import to an existing program. Okay, then it will come up with, there will be some situations that will be duplicates. Then you have to pull up there's a subroutine that says find duplicates.
Okay,
Okay,
Is it Jet, J-E-T? or
G, George,
G? Jet.
actually genealogy, GEDCOM. Okay, well, I'm going to take one quick section and share my latest research because it's such good fun for me anyway. I have been exploring the colonial wars of New England. My wife has an enormous French Canadian background, and the thing that's fun about it is that one of her ancestors was Joseph Stebbins, who at the age of 4 was kidnapped from Deerfield, Massachusetts by the Indians and French and taken up to Quebec, where he was raised, married, raised a family, and the whole bit. So he grew up as a French Canadian, but he is of hardy stock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, I may have to break out here. Okay, let's go here. Are you able to see the John Stebbins thing?
No,
No, okay. Are you seeing my screen?
no.
Oh, okay, I thought I was sharing, okay. Then I will now share screen. And we're gonna go to John Stebbins.
It's still not shared though.
I'm coming.
Oh, okay.
Here we are, John Stebbins. This is the program I use. It's called Family Historian. And as you can see, it's very rich in information. And one of the things I've done is I've put some of the specific documents in here that you can look at. So you can go to the media section and look at this, which is a list of Mosley's troops that were at the King Philip's War in what is called the Great Swamp. And there is my John Stebbins, who is the father of Joseph Stebbins. And then here is a reference to, he was earlier a soldier under Captain Lathrop, and he was the only man known to have escaped unhurt from the Buddy Brook massacre. 70 people were going from Boston to Deerfield and were virtually annihilated by a large troop of Indians. And only a few of them survived, and he was one. So this is proving that she has ancestry involved in the colonial wars. So if she wanted to become a colonial dame, she could. I just thought that was fun.
Yep.
Okay, I will stop sharing. All right, any other comments? Well, thank you all for joining.
You.
Liz is going to, at some future date, tell us about her brick wall she just solved. But we'll see whether that's September or October. And wish you all, we're going to probably be on Zoom for September. And we can all just be hopeful that this thing reaches the point where we feel safe being back together in person. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, George.